The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast are based on information available at the time of the recording and are subject to change in the future. The content provided is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice or a substitute for consulting with qualified professionals. Listener discretion is advised. Hello and welcome to another edition of Lexception. In this episode, we'll be discussing how perspectives can change when you become a parent, specifically on the areas of morals and principles. Is compromise really a part of parenthood? This is the luxury of principles. First up, what do we mean by luxury of principles? The title of this episode comes from the historical war drama, The Patriot. Set in the American Revolutionary War, the film follows the story of Benjamin Martin, played by Mel Gibson, who was a widower and a former soldier who has settled into the quiet life of owning a plantation. The line comes from an early scene where the settlers, who were in the town hall, discussed going to war against the British. Martin argues against war while others were for it. When challenged about his principles, Martin replied, "I'm a parent, I haven't got the luxury of principles." In an ideal world, we would all stand firmly by our principles, whether they are personal or political, without compromise. However, when parenting comes into play, these principles can sometimes feel like a luxury we can't afford. Some 20 odd years ago, when I was in university, I was really big into politics. I dabbled in some student activism, and my research was all about political discourse. My blog used to be filled with tirades about everything I saw wrong about the government, and I considered every government policy and official fair game for criticism. I always thought as long as I'm arguing for what I consider right, it's okay. But, brazenness and idiocy does come hand in hand with youth. I did eventually tune things down, partly because I got busy with other things, work, life. Though aside from that, I also wanted not to draw too much attention to, people I care about. Deep inside, though, I still felt strongly about how much a farce democracy is in this country and that we needed to do better. But the more I got to know about how real things can get, I also had to mind not to piss off the wrong people. Then, a few years ago, administrations changed for the worse. Some pockmarked face foul-mouthed from down south ascended to the presidency, and the whole landscape changed dramatically. Dissent during his term attracted a bad kind of attention. You post anything critical about that administration online, and you become the target of rabbit trolls and fanatics. A year into that administration, the kid was born, and by then, it had become apparent that there are some things I didn't want to leave to chance. Politics and personal safety suddenly seemed that they won't mix, ever. Even if I hadn't written anything controversial for years, I did hurry cleaning up all my content online and set all the political stuff to private. Yeah, coward little me, but I just didn't want to attract the negative kind of attention. Not when I have something new to care about. Next, let's try to understand the parental perspective. So, why do parents feel the need to scale back on their advocacies and hardline stances? The primary reason, I think, is the instinct to protect children. Parents worry about the immediate physical safety of children and the potential long-term social consequences. It's a complex internal conflict, staying true to one's principles versus ensuring the safety and stability of their children. Personally, when I tried to view things as objectively as I could, I shouldn't have to worry too much. My activism fizzled out right after graduation from college. And at that point, I never really went to demonstrations or mobilizations. And I wasn't ever even affiliated with any mass organization seriously. I don't lobby or protest outside my digital soapbox. And I just wanted to run my mouth online against social ills and be critical of what I see as injustices and wrongs. But when I begin weighing the potential consequences, I start to favor caution. It suddenly becomes too much of a bother and a potential risk to be on a crusade that you have very little chance of winning anyway. You have a family to feed and a kid to care for. The parental instinct to protect offspring is a natural and fundamental aspect of being human, or being an animal for that matter. We can credit nature and evolution, which have instilled the instinct to ensure the continuation of one's genetic lineage. This is probably why, when put in a situation where one has to choose between ensuring the safety of one's brood versus the greater good, most would protect one's own. So, how low can you go? Principles aren't just about politics, it can be grounded on morality too. You'd often hear parents claim, "There's nothing I wouldn't do for my child." And I used to think that was a load of drama and hogwash, but whenever I see my kid, I guess it's just a drive that most non scumbag parents immediately get when their kids are born. Parents could endure a lot of crap in the name of providing for their kids. People will take on shitty jobs just to be able to put food on the table. And this is why I always give people's hustle the benefit of the doubt, especially those who come from disadvantaged backgrounds. Judeo Christian values, which are a huge thing in our country, promote the dignity of the person. Yet, circumstances often have us compromise that dignity for survival. Interestingly, some would even do criminal things in the name of providing for their kids. I do wonder what kind of stomach one would have to be able to do evil stuff. On a more scaled back level, some people who actually get into corrupt deals and ally themselves with like abusive corporations and other entities. Then again, doing so pays for their houses with swimming pools, luxury cars, trips abroad, tuition for their kids in expensive Catholic private schools. These luxuries. I think these people just have this mentality of you gotta do what you got to do. Now, if you do some introspection, you can hark back to the days when you're young and idealistic and compare that to your current situation. What lines can you actually cross, or have you actually crossed for the ones you love? Now, just to try and sum things up, it does seem that this dilemma of principled parenthood might boil down to two things. One is how much do you have to lose? And two, how far will you go to protect the ones you care about? These two would seem to be good determinants of how much sacrifice one needs to make and the amount of fight one can put up. Can you actually be a parent with principles? Sure you can. But there's always a trade-off or sacrifice, it seems. This is why I have a deep admiration for those who are willing to take on the fights that I can't. Sadly, there are those who have to be real heroes and die fighting for the good fight. That said, you might be able to use parenthood as an excuse not to play the hero. But there should still be some room for principles, right? How else can you set a good example for your child on how to be a good person and make sure that the kid doesn't grow up with a messed up moral compass? But yes, given how things really go in the grand scheme of things, principles really seem to be a luxury and most parents can rarely afford them. So I guess that's it for now. Thanks for listening and I'll catch you in the next one.